Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for making yourself available to meet today. I'd like to call the meeting of the Permanent Building Committee to order. I've sent out the agenda, as you know. I think you all have it. The first order of business is the discussion uh, of the chairmanship here. I've resigned my position with the Permanent Building Committee as of tomorrow. The first order is to select a new chairperson. I just like to say, I think in the letter that I sent to Aaron Underhill, I think it's past experience has led me to believe that it's very important that the Permanent Building Committee have great credibility with the town. We've asked for funds for, I'm not sure how many millions of dollars, but it's a lot, 60, $70 million over the course of the PBC's existence. And I think the citizens of Millis need to have trust and confidence that what we are recommending is accurate and is right. And based on recent meetings and discussions in town, I don't believe that trust currently exists. And so I've thought a lot about this, and I think it's important that we maintain that trust. And so I'm not sure if it's my desire to make sure that it continues with somebody else, or if it is just from a selfish perspective, my own feeling that I don't want to work in an environment where our credibility is questioned. That could be either, could be both, could be some of each. So for that reason, I've decided to resign. And so I know it's somewhat abrupt, but nevertheless, I think it's an important point. I've had this position for 24 years, and I think it's time for someone else to be the leader, the face of the PBC. So for that reason, I would entertain motions for a candidate to be the new chairperson.
Sorry, somebody was banging at my door, just like we said. So I would be willing to step up to do this. Right now I have the planning board, and I think that I would be willing to step up. I may come back for reconsideration later, because either I'll have to resign from the planning board, or or be replaced. Because once this got going, the commitment would be more than I would be able to do for two boards. That would be, like I said, I would be willing to step up to do it. And then I would have to make the decision where I would go going forwards.
Okay. So am I understanding it correctly, Rich, that you'd be willing to consider this on an interim basis, or?
Yeah, I would do it on an interim basis. I just have to figure out, where I would go from planning board. I could step up and take the permanent chair, but obviously, like you said, that your decision was made very, just recently. I'd have to do a little bit of thinking about this. So for short term, I could definitely do both of them. Like I said, if a bigger project came along, like the middle school, I'd have to see if I would have the time to do both, which probably could be complicated.
Well, the middle high school project will be happening immediately, Rich.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that in greater detail, but my expectation is that if that passes tomorrow night, there would be a need for the PB, or not the PBC, but the middle high school building committee, which includes Steve Catalano and Denise Gibbons. And I think there's some confusion as to whether or not there's another person that's been on, but that's been appointed as voting members to that group. But um,
Sorry.
I think that group would need to meet immediately, because the need to put out all the steps. I won't go into great detail now, but there are a lot of steps that need to be taken immediately to get that project underway. So I'm not sure if that influences your decision or not, but it's not the senior project that really, I think, is driving the schedule here. It would be the school project.
Right, I agree.
Okay. Anybody else that is interested in considering this lofty position of being the chair?
Through the chair, not for that, but to make a comment, if I might, Mr. Chair, Kathy McInnes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
You know, I'd really like to know when your Permanent Building Commission committee issues began, because I'm grateful Mr. McCaffrey and I are here. And I was with you for 3 years, Jim, and I don't know how many decades Mr. McCaffrey can let in on how many he was with you on the projects. And never once did I see any form of dysfunction that has been out of you in the last several months over this project, because of no leadership from anyone that should be leading. And I'm not going to go into what's going on, but you know, Wayne, it's going to happen to the next person, regardless of who it is. I know you're taking the sword for your committee, but it's not an appropriate time for you to take the sword and foist it on someone that clearly no one is capable, I believe, anywhere in town of fulfilling your shoes. And it should be something that it should be open to either expand the board and get some people that are younger, that are going to commit to 12 to 15 years to living in Millis and all that it has to offer, and to help investing in it. And you there to lead them to do that. So I'm not going to get upset anymore and say anything. I'm just going to say, you know, Wayne, I learned more from you and Mr. McCaffrey than I did from anybody, and Mr. Aspinwall included. And now you're just like all disappearing for the wrong reasons. Thank you. And I'm back to mute.
Well, I certainly appreciate your comments, Kathy. But I guess the question really is for me and for all of us, whether or not this is a tenable situation in which to work, and whether or not really for the good of the town. You know, that's we just deal with whatever difficulties are presented to us. My feeling is that by stepping aside, it will give the next person the ability to make a credible argument. And so my decision is final. I appreciate your comments, but I'm not Tom Brady. I'm not going to unresign and come back. I've made my decision, and I'm sticking with it. So Rich has agreed to consider being the chair. Anybody else have any other thoughts or desires to step into that responsibility?
Wayne, this is Jim. I've thought about it as well. I think that I could do a reasonably good job in the short term. I have a very strong concern that without the kind of construction and or project management and or building management skills that you have or that Rich has, that I just couldn't be as effective. But I agree with Rich that if he's going to do it, he's going to have to give up one or the other. I just don't see how the two of them are tenable. And my view is, correct me if I'm wrong, and the others can comment. The school project is, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year project here, assuming it goes forward. But it has to start relatively soon, and I don't want to ignore the senior center project either, because that's a live one as well. But as we all know, a lot of times on the school side, it's the MSBA that's driving the bus here. And we need to be thorough and timely and get back to them and, be their partner in managing the project. So it's a tall task, for sure.
John Larkin, anything to add? Any thoughts?
Not a whole lot. I agree with what Jim just said. Excuse me. I think the background that Rich has is probably the right direction to go in. He's young, energetic, and I'm sure he can handle the job. It is a question mark. When I say he's young, he's younger than me. Let's put it that way.
He's younger than all of us on here, except maybe, I won't speak for Kim Bors, but
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that, as to your comment, Jim McCaffrey, is that, my issue is going to be daily meetings where Wayne was available to go and have site meetings. Because obviously, when the site meetings are is exactly at the same time I'm on my project. So that's my issue, is that, for me to, go to the weekly site meetings, unless they happened at night, that would be, impossible for me to get to. And the thing with it is, there needs to be enough either description of what's going on. So if you didn't necessarily have the construction knowledge, you would know what red flags to look for, or you'd have to have the construction, backgrounds. If Wayne knows enough, if, the steel guy said something and it didn't seem right, to question it. And, if you weren't necessarily in the trades, you wouldn't know that. If it's the same thing as if you had said something like a lawyer thing, some of that legalese that you guys use, I'd have no idea if it was right or wrong. So, that's going to be, my difficulty is, being available. I had thought, in hopefully a couple of years when I retired, I was thinking I would consider, if Wayne I had stuck it out longer, considering, I would take the leadership or apply for the leadership. But, my concern is, my availability during the day. I mean, that's going to be tough. So I'd have to have somebody that was knowledgeable enough to help with that.
I would think, based on the school project, the first year wasn't as much daytime availability as it was once construction started. So we'll be in a design phase for the first year of it. Mm-hmm. And then I see Kathy's left, but I do agree with a lot of what she said. First, Wayne, thank you. I'll start with that. But I've worked with you since the library, and I've learned as much from this committee as any other committee I've ever been on, or more from this committee than any other committee, and I've enjoyed it far more than any other committee I've been on. But with this right now, the daytime work is going to start when, after we have another override, if it passes, if the override passes and we start construction, that's when the day work will begin, I believe. And I would think that the select board has to find more qualified people to be on this with trade background. Not that we're all not qualified, but somebody with the trades background that could pick up a little bit in the daytime hours. I mean, that seems to be the need that we have for this committee right now. So I don't know, maybe we can get by, Rich, for the first year, and then after it starts the construction, that does become an issue, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just want to be upfront to,
Yeah.
what I can give, I just don't want to disappoint anyone. If I had more time available, we wouldn't be talking about it, but I'm running a large project right now, and, it's, all the difficulties in the projects that we build. I have the same things, all day long, and I can't leave, because when I leave, my little munchkins go and do silly things. So,
Is that a technical term?
yeah, well, I use other terms, but they're not for polite conversation.
Not when we're recorded, no.
Diane?
I have some similar concerns to what Jim McCaffrey expressed. Having been through a school project, I do have a lot of experience with it. I don't have the depth of construction experience that certainly either Wayne or Rich does. But I think we could work together on all of that. So I would be willing to also step up for at least the first year to get things established.
All right, well, we have more volunteers than I expected. I can tell you that every time I ask the question as chair as to whether or not anyone else would like it, everybody took one step backwards. So now that I've figured out the way to stop that from happening is to actually resign, now we've got some options. So
Wayne, I'm happy to take the step backward.
And I want to be clear, I wasn't even offering, so let's
No.
just.
and John did not. John was offered some helpful comments, but I don't think John Larkin offered either. So
You read that correctly, Wayne.
all right, good. Diane and Jim and Rich, who would between the three of you, what's your thought about who you think would be the best chair for the committee?
Well, I'll start. I mean, I think that, I think Rich's offer is a generous one. I agree with Craig that we're not going to run into the daily meetings kind of thing. And I think that with people like Diane to be backups as well, and hopefully recruiting another one or two strong people, we'd be able to backfill. And I think Rich also has a lot of credibility in the community because he's got these, well-known, he's been an elected official, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's important as well.
All right. Diane?
Well, I think I've already pretty much said what I have to say. I mean, I went through the whole school process with you as vice chair. There are many times when I'd look at myself and think, I don't know what they're talking about, but I was able to go to meetings every week, to make site visits, to do whatever needed to be done. So that's, I think, a plus for me, but I'm not sure I want to take on the whole 9 yards without some good construction backup.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we have two candidates then. We have Diane and Rich who would like to, who would be willing to be the chair of the committee. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Jim?
That's, yes.
And John?
Yes.
All right. So of the committee, who would support Rich being the chair?
Me,
All right,
one.
okay,
I would support that one.
I'm a non-voting member, so I'm, just want to make that clear, Rich.
Okay, I will agree with John and Rich.
all right. Diane,
It's fine with me.
that is fine with you. I will abstain. This is your committee and this is your decision, so based on that discussion, Rich, you are now the chair of the Permanent Building Committee.
Well, I thank you very much. It's gonna be an interesting ride,
Yep, I agree.
right? And just to follow up, Wayne, I do want to comment with everyone else that's made the same comment. I do work in construction, and I have to say, I learned quite a bit from you on things that I hadn't been exposed to. And also, some of the way you approach things, which I tend to get a little more excited, and you tend to be a little bit more laid back and methodical, which, is good. So I do have to say, I did learn, quite a bit from you, from an insurance guy, if I am correct.
Well, you are, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about the projects here and what,
Can I just, do we need to take an actual vote with a motion and all that?
Probably should.
I think so.
all right. All right, let's do that then. We have a motion for Rich Nichols to be the chair of the PBC. Do I have a second?
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to do this by roll to make it clear. John Larkin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Jim McCaffrey,
Aye,
Diane Germain,
aye.
Wayne Clocko abstains.
So did you make the actual motion, Wayne?
I did not.
Who made the actual motion?
I believe John Larkin did.
Okay,
John,
Yes.
you're looking a little puzzled.
I am.
Is it correct that you made the motion?
Yes.
All right, okay,
okay.
good.
Thank you for clarifying.
I was just, you were looking a little puzzled there and I thought I didn't want to put words in.
That's just my normal look, Wayne.
I'm getting used to it a little too late in the game here. All right. Well, congratulations, Rich. You do have a lot ahead of you, so good luck.
Thank you.
So
Mr.
tomorrow
Chairman.
night,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McCaffrey.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we have a formal vice chair, particularly if we have daytime things we need to deal with, and
I agree.
we have a vastly experienced vice chair on the team, and maybe she's willing to be designated as that. That would be helpful in terms of we don't miss any beats, at least in the short run.
That's perfect. Is that a motion?
I would move, if she's willing to do it, to appoint,
What's her name?
senior moment, Diane Germain to serve as the vice chair of the Permanent Building Committee.
I second that motion. All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Can I
All right,
vote for
great.
myself? Yeah,
Sure you can.
okay.
and Wayne Clocko abstains.
All right, great.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Uh,
Mr. Clocker.
I would suggest that we talk about tomorrow evening at the at the town meeting.
Yes, I agree.
There's going to be a vote, and Jim, perhaps you or Craig can lead us through what you think, how this is all going to happen. But I think it's going to be important for the Permanent Building Committee to understand its role in whatever discussion, whatever motions are made regarding the senior center project, and that you're prepared to deal with that. So who wants to lead the group through that?
Wayne, could I, or Mr. Chairman, could I ask if Craig could update us on any action that board may have taken Monday
Yes,
night?
please. Yeah, please, Craig, go ahead.
Okay, Wednesday night, the finance, last week, Wednesday, the finance committee voted to refer, make their main motion to refer the senior center project for future consideration. That will be the motion that the FinCom makes at that time. I assume, and I'll defer to the former moderator on our group, that that's a debatable motion. So there'll be discussion on that. The select board at our meeting on Monday night did not take another vote on that. We took the vote on Wednesday night as the board, and we decided that vote stands. We had decided that it was a 2-to-1 vote to refer also. There was, and so we did not re-vote that. So what'll happen is at the meeting, I assume that Brutus will have debate on the article, the motion to refer. The motion to refer will get voted up or down. If it's voted down not to refer it, my assumption is at that point, somebody will make a motion to either approve or dismiss the senior center project as written. And at that point, further debate will occur. So I mean, there's 2 points of conversation I think the permanent building committee would be involved in. On referral, whether that's something that you agree with or not, whether, or make the statements, clearly, if we're referring it for further study, where's the money for further study? Not to coach or put words into the mouth here, but there are no more funds available for this. The referral means that, who's going to work on it? What's the situation going to be? If that does not pass and the motion is to approve, there might be further conversation as to why this is the right project. And if the motion is to dismiss, there might be same topic, why this is the right project and shouldn't be dismissed. Those would be the 2 points that I'd see that you'd be discussing on. Have I missed anything, Jim?
No, I think that's right. We have to sort of plan for one or the other. And what's the role of this committee? Could I ask if there's any intent on the part of the selectmen to speak to this, either for or against?
Well, I have learned from you that when the committee votes, I do not speak different than the committee on this one. However, I have anticipated that if I do feel the need to speak, I may move to the audience to comment, because I was the one vote that voted not to refer it. I voted that we should go for a up or down vote on this at the meeting. So I won't contradict as a select person on the stage, but if I do feel the need to say something, I will move to the floor. I don't know that the select board is going to make a comment on it one way or the other officially. And more importantly, I can't remember which articles I have to comment on, which becomes a real issue. I'm going to have to look that up. But it's either Ellen or I have this one. I'm pretty sure.
What is the feeling from the council on aging, or who the sponsor of this? What do they want to do on this? Do they want to try to push it off, or do they want to try to put it to a vote? Is there any thought on that?
Yeah, it was their motion to refer. They wanted to remove it from the warrant, but the mechanics weren't in place to do that. We'd already published the warrant, so that couldn't happen.
I mean, because if it gets deferred, then, it's not, if it goes up or down, it's either, approved or not approved. And then that would be the end of it, and they'd have to start all over again. If we deferred it, you know, we could look at, you know, cost-cutting options, whatever. I mean, there'd be a chance to VE the design.
Mr.
In
Chairman.
theory, yeah.
Go ahead.
The difficulty with VEing the design, and I think that really gets to the crux of the problem, is that unless the committee felt comfortable enough to do that on their own, or with, not, I shouldn't say on their own, but the only way I envision that would be able to happen without any additional funding for Abacus or some other architect to advise on the project and go through the PM&C estimate and everything else that comprises the $16 million amount, we'd be left with the Permanent Building Committee and the Council on Aging making arbitrary cuts to the project in a really less than scientific way, that I think could be problematic. So to me, and you said the word defer, but I think what the motion was to refer the
I'm
matter.
sorry, I thought I was saying refer. It is a
No,
referral.
No, you did, but I think Rich was saying defer, and I just
Oh,
want
okay.
to make sure that there's a difference between the two. Referring back to the committee without having the ability to go back to the team that put this together and make decisions about, are there programming cuts? Are there quality of construction cuts? And that the COA and the PBC agreed with those. I don't see how that would happen. And so referral doesn't get us anywhere, in my view, unless there's some additional funding that would be made available for that to happen.
And the unfortunate thing is with the timing of everything, there is no way to get additional funding because we can't put an article for funding on the warrant. Had this happened before the warrant was closed, we could have put, $25,000 for cost analysis or whatever onto the warrant to give some resources available. But right now there's not a lot of options.
Right. Well, my concern is that, if we put it to vote and it gets voted down, then we're at zero. So it would be dead.
Actually, it's about the same result either way, because there's no referral's not binding on the select board to ever bring it back. It's not binding on this committee to do any work. I don't know the legality of this one, so I'll defer to the moderator again, Jim. But I don't know if town committee can instruct the Permanent Building Committee and the Council on Aging to continue working on this. I believe that there are select board appointments and it's a select board's job to work on that. But there's a lot of ins and outs of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, referral is to refer back to the sponsoring board, which is the select board. Select board's going to have to decide what it wants to do with that, including nothing, because it doesn't bind you to do anything.
Right.
I don't see it as setting the Council on Aging and the Permanent Building Committee off on their own. I mean, we're trying to implement policy that has been, developed by the select board. But the referral includes the ability of the select board to, let's say, find some money so that we could, redesign or have some professional help to, re-examine the cost structure or whatever. That'd be slightly differently. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if this gets referred, it's referred to the board. And I want to know what the board wanted us to do with it. And if it's just spin our wheels together, I guess that would not be as helpful.
I don't believe there's a clear plan from the select board what to do when referral occurs. I mean, there's certainly no money available at this moment. And as soon as we can get money would be, you know, unless we can find money in a budget line that relates to it somehow, which is a stretch at this point. In the 2023 budget, we'd have to go to the 2024 budget or town meeting. So it is a tricky position. We haven't had a lot of these for obvious reasons, you know?
I have a question for Craig.
Yes.
What is Ellen's role with this now?
She is a member of the select board who is a proponent of a modified senior center plan, I guess, is what it sounds like. I don't know officially. She's one of 3 members on the board. We would have to have a vote to do something with it should referral pass. I wouldn't have to, but I assume we would have a vote to do something with it if referral passes. Whether send it back to this committee with no money and say, do your best, or try to find money to make it a worthwhile cost study.
I mean, I know that she was looking at other options. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, she hasn't articulated other options to us except what she said at finance committee, basically, you know. What's been said at the finance committee is about as much as we've heard as well. And I wasn't privy to all those meetings, but I think that they're available. Basically, she felt that the soft costs were too high and other things, the short answer.
Well, Rich, I'm not sure if we're getting, you know, to your question as or whether this is moving the ball around or not. But this question of referral, I think somebody needs to make clear, and Craig, whether or not it's you speaking from the floor or somebody from this committee, for the people in the audience who are not, you know, up on this whole process, it's illusory, because if the thought is that the $16 million is too high, we're going to send it back to the COA and the PBC to figure it out and come back with a different number, which was precisely the conversation that took place at the pre-town meeting by its chair. That's illusory. As we've all discussed here, that's not going to happen either just between those 2 committees or without, you know, some additional funding to do it in a proper, thoughtful way. So.
So I think that the thing is on this is that, you know, the charge of the permanent building committee was to take information, you know, take input from the town, produce a building that would meet the needs of what the request was and present it. We're not in the funding, you know, no one, correct me if I'm wrong, no one gave us a budget on this. No one said, hey, you've got $9 million to spend. They said, you know, here's the building we want. We went out and did that, and that's the number that came back. And so, like, when we do that in our construction, is we present the budget. It's too much money. Okay, what can we do to reduce the cost? So that would be the step that we would take. It doesn't sound like, unfortunately, the way that this process is going, we have the ability to do that right now. So, you know, I would say that normal step we would do is go back and redesign, you know, cut things back, like Wayne said, we, you know, with some input from design professionals on how to do that. So that would be the answer. So the question is, how do we get there?
I think you let the select board take over.
We'll have to figure out the way that works. Yeah. And that's where we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do. And I can't speak
Right.
for what our solution would be.
Right, because I can't see the,
yeah.
sorry, I can't see what the permanent building committee, we can't do anything without, you know, without money. If the town wanted us to spend $6 million on a senior center project, then they should have said, hey, build a senior center and you can't spend any more than $6 million.
Right.
And then we would have done that. They didn't ask us to do that. They said, hey, build a senior center. And we presented information to do such.
Rich, the
Um,
original,
The only caveat I'd put there, Rich, I'm sorry, go ahead, Diane.
the original charter was a study.
Mhm.
There were no
Yeah.
parameters given about money or size or anything else. We started from scratch with COA to try and figure out what they needed.
Right.
Right.
And that's how we
That's
got
what-
to
yeah.
that
I was gonna say,
money.
the charge was to build a building that meets our need for 50 years and accommodates the programming of the Council on Aging as they dictated it.
So what I would
No
say
dollar put on that.
from
Yeah.
the planning board, I mean, sorry, from the permanent building committee viewpoint is, we went ahead, we did what we were asked to do. It came in too high, okay. And I would put it back to the select board in the COA to say, hey, what's the next step? I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at. I mean, we're more than willing to do whatever. And I think also going forwards, if we have other projects that that we're thinking of doing, I think there probably ought to be a budget number that we are working towards, because I mean, and it's just, no one did anything, with ill will. It's just, hey, make me a cool senior center. And we did. I think next time we should just have a number in mind.
Well, I'll say that we've never had a number in mind. We started before, and going back to other projects, the library did go to the town meeting and fail. It was voted down and dismissed. It was too expensive. It was 2 floors. It was 20% larger than the minimum state required size. So it was too big, 2 stories, would cost more to operate. And Charlie Vecchi and I were the two that pushed to put it back on a warrant at a reduced rate, but there was money someplace where actually it's the library commission, the state library commissioners helped us come up with an estimate on the reductions. So that's how that all started. And that was my first experience with with this committee, actually. But even if it fails at town meeting, that doesn't mean the need goes away, and it's still going to have to be a redesigned building of some type. So either way, no matter what happens, something's coming back at some future meeting. I can't say what year, what month, what meeting, but this problem is not solved by referring, dismissing, or dismissing. Approving would, move it forward.
Can I just interject for a second, because I was at the Council on Aging meeting where they voted to support, I'll call it withdrawal, but it doesn't make any difference, delay, whatever.
Yeah.
Their expectation was that during the period from the, first week in November to town meeting in mid-May, the project would be completely redesigned, prices would be established, and a proposal would be made to the town, including the possibility of having a debt exclusion ballot question in May, the week before the town meeting. So there's some expectation there among the primary customer, if you will, that this referral process will result in a new proposal within 6 months. And if that's not going to be the case, when people vote on referral, whenever they vote, I mean, somebody has to make it clear that deferral, referral, defeat means it's going to take at least another year to come
Where
back
did they-
with a
Jim, where did
alternative.
they get that information? Where did they get that information that in 6 months there'd be a new study and all that? Just because
I
I'm coming
suggest-
in blind.
No, I suggest there's a select board member that told him that she could do that. And it's not the chairman. I mean, I don't be cute.
No.
Ellen told him that. Ellen told him,
Yeah.
that. Oh, I can do
Yeah.
this. We can do this.
But there's
Yeah,
no,
and-
there's no funding, so.
Right.
Kind
I
of a
think
moot
that's the
point.
piece that's being missed by everybody who thinks there's a way to do this by next town meeting. And I think that's what's missed by everybody who hasn't been beaten down by town government. Without funding sources, you just can't do it. It's not me at my business. I'm doing a $5.5 million swimming pool. When they told me that it was going to cost 5.5, we sat in a room and cut $500,000 with the builder, and done. It was not a tricky process. With towns, it's not that easy.
No,
Well, let me ask a question then to the committee. Is it our job at this point, when the motion to refer comes up, to simply get up and say, we want everyone to understand that without funding, it'd be extremely difficult for the committee to produce a revised solid revised proposal in 6 months. It's probably going to take a year, pending funding for the study. I mean, it's as simple as that.
I would think that's
And
the
I'll-
select board.
Well, I agree with that, but
Yeah.
Hey, just one quick question, guys,
Yeah.
and this is off the topic. So I hit something on my stupid Zoom meeting and I can't see any of you. You know how to get back?
No,
Oh, I got it. I hit it. There we go. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, if you bring your cursor to the bottom.
I don't, yeah, going
I got
back to that,
Sorry.
that
No.
clear request for help from the select board. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I agree with what Jim just said, is that, that it seems like there has been, there's an assumption from the Council on Aging that something would happen. Without funding, we would have to, I don't know how we would go about VEing it until you'd only way you'd be able to do that would be to go to bid. And to go to bid, that means you have to have money to do that, which means that it'd have to pass at town meeting. So I'm not quite sure on, who explains to the, the Council of Aging that, on Aging, that what they're thinking is going to happen is going to happen.
I would argue nobody needs to explain to Council on Aging. I think somebody has to explain it to town meeting, and that somebody, from the gist of what I've heard from Mr. McCaffrey and the insinuations from others, could very well be the select board, which might be me. Because there is no money available. Without money available, I personally won't vote for a project that somebody comes in and says costs 5 million. I can do this for 7. I need to see the process that this committee puts into everything we do, or there's a cost estimator who's hired that does the work. So yeah, it can be referred, but we're going to push it out till a year from today, because let's say we only have to do a quick redesign. We vote money at the spring town meeting. We do the work over the winter and over the summer, and then November we vote, a scaled down version with a new price. So yeah, the referral means we're referring it out for at least a year. I have no problem saying that at town meeting, that's what we're
I think
talking about doing.
they have to have knowledge of what's going to happen. I mean, and I think also, just so that, what I said about the permanent building committee is that, that unfortunately we did what the task was done, is to design a building. The numbers came in too high. It didn't mean that anything was done wrong. It just means that the numbers came in too high and we have to redesign it. I mean, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Can I just interject on that? Because I agree with you, Rich, except for one thing.
Mhm.
The buyer didn't tell us that. The
Right.
buyer is the town meeting.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Rich,
Yeah.
that's an important point, Rich. The process of all of the focus groups, of all of the work that has been, all of the materials that have been put out, has all been towards the end of putting the information, here's the programming, here's the design, and putting all of that information with the cost in front of the voters to decide whether or not they could afford it.
Mhm.
That has never, whether it's too high or not, has never been determined.
Mhm.
Some people have said very vocally that it's too high, and I agree with you. And Ellen Rosenfeld has made it very clear that she can do this project, whatever this project is, for $12 million, and that's the magic number. And I have no idea how or why she believes that. And so there's a lot of misinformation that's floating around
Right.
about what the project is or should be. And so I think part of what needs to happen tomorrow night is really to dispel all of the, the thought that as Jim said, that in May, there will be a project that will be skinny down. It'll be $12 million, and we're going to present this to the voters for another chance. And in fact, that's what was discussed at the pre-town meeting with the finance committee, that was going to happen. And as we've all discussed here, it's impossible for that to happen. And so I think there's a misunderstanding on the part of at least one person on the select board. I'm not sure who on the finance committee. And I think, but most importantly, the general public that believe that, somehow that's the next step.
I think there's a large segment of the general public, Wayne, that doesn't want this built at all.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a website or a Facebook site, there are signs. And I think there's a lot of resistance. I think on the other side of it, there are a lot of people that want it built. So that issue is going to have to be resolved at town meeting.
Oh, and Diane, I certainly agree, but for both of those parties, for everybody who wants to vote up or down on this issue, there's no way for the work to be done in order to
Correct.
tee that up for people,
Right.
to make that decision. We can't get there from here.
Nope.
Well,
I'll
can
be
I-
glad to.
the
I feel comfortable making the comment that referral means a year from now from the table. I don't think that that's taking an opinion that's contrary to the board. I think it's just clarifying the facts of it. So I don't feel like I'm contradicting anybody at that point, or the vote that we had.
Okay.
Well, I would certainly appreciate that. And, I guess the point, I'm trying to put words in people's mouths. I think it's a consensus of the permanent building committee that a redesign projects requires, a project to redesign, not just let's lower the, I mean, look, if people want to spend less money, how much less? And what are they willing to give up? And if it's just make the building smaller, well, okay. That's because we're going to offer fewer programs. But, I think, let's assume for the sake of argument that the motion to refer is adopted. Okay, and the town meeting has adopted it with the full knowledge that it may not get something back in May. It may take longer than that. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, I'm fine with that. That's what the town wants to do. But if they want to vote to refer, thinking they're going to get a brand new proposal 6 months later, I think that's a mistake. They can't think that because it's not right.
Yeah, I'll clarify that if I need to. Ellen actually has the select board comments on this one. I just get my notes out from Monday night. But as anybody who's known me for 25 years, I'll speak on anything. So I'll clarify if I need to on this. And if it's not clearly, if there's anything that implies this is coming back in May, then I'll clarify that it has to be November because of the timing.
Right. And the other thing, Craig, on that is that, we may, we would need additional funds because we don't do this work ourselves to do it. So that, if we redesign to go smaller, not a problem. There'll have to be funding available to do so. It's not going to be as much. It would be something, but we'd have to. And
that amount would probably be, well, the whole study was 35,000. So I don't know what a cost estimator and all that work would be, but I figure something in that neighborhood would probably pull it off again.
Yeah.
Well, since we got $135,000 worth of work for 35,000.
Yeah, I'm only trying to get them done.
See if Abacus will do more for nothing.
Start with this, take out this. How much does it cost now? I need something I can hang my hat on as a number, but again, that's what I come back to. The only way to make it work is build cheaper, less quality, not less expense, but build it with less quality or scale back on the program. Now, if the program is too large, the program is based on what the Council on Aging said. And just tell me you need a smaller program and we can cut whatever many feet, but tell me that that's the true program that's needed.
Let me ask a question. If this winds up coming back to our committee, I mean, are we locked into Cassidy Farm? Abbott has presented three plans. Council on Aging chose Cassidy Farm. So if this comes back to us, are we stuck on that? Are we opening up a conversation for other options?
I think
If I could
anything's on the table.
If I could make a recommendation, and and I'm not sure, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but I I don't know what the town's looking for at this point, but it's clear they're looking for options that aren't focused on the programming needs. They're focused on the price. So do you have 3 options where you've got, hey, here's a $3 million renovation of town hall. This is the bare minimum. It does very little to help anything, but it looks prettier. Do you have a $8 million project that does something, but not everything? And we stand behind this project with a little engineering, we get it down to, 14.5 million, 15 million, something along those lines. But those are and then the select board or whoever can decide, which one they want to go with. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I don't know which direction to go. We tried doing it the way that we've always done it, which is design it to meet the program, and that kind of melted down.
And the only thing with if we go back, John, to the VMB is there's so many, there's a lot of difficulties and unknowns working on an old building. So, and that, I mean, we could get in there, we could find, issues with contamination. We also have to move people out of the way. We're gonna have to play with the heating system. There's a bunch of stuff that we'd have to do that impact that. And if we relocate somebody, so say we have to relocate a couple offices, where are we gonna put them? We'll have to pay for that. So there's a lot of costs in there that people don't see that we'll end up paying for, as opposed to the standalone type of thing, so.
No, I agree with that, Rich. I understand that. My feeling is that, and it's purely an opinion. The Council on Aging, I think, is locked into Cassidy Farm, particularly now. They're basically being told what they want to hear from another source. So, for some reason, they do think, I think that, oh yeah, this is just a magic act, and come next spring town meeting, we'll have a new plan, and we should be putting a foundation in the ground sometime in June. And that's just not gonna happen. And I don't think it's up to the council to educate them on that at town meeting. They do have to be educated, I think, but not by us.
John, you probably weren't around when we were doing this, but early on in the process, they chose VMB. And then they thought about it for a while and said, nah, there's not enough parking there. We want a shiny new building. We choose Cassidy. So there's been some waffling there, all for, what they considered as important reasons. And I think trying to move them out of Cassidy is going to be difficult.
Well, I agree with that.
All right, so the thing is, just to finalize, so going to the not finalize, but try to get a point. So at town meeting tomorrow,
Right.
what are other than run? Okay. Wayne can go first. I'm going to be ducking behind you, Wayne. Okay. So what are we doing at town meeting? What are our steps so we all know what to do? What is our action plan? So the motion comes up and it's been referred. Craig gets up and explains what referral means. And then it comes up for vote from there, correct?
It'll come up for other people to discuss. If somebody else gets up and says, whoever that person may be, no, we can clearly get this done by June, get this ready for the May town meeting. We don't need to have additional funds. We can come up with a study ourselves. I would think somebody from this committee should step up and say that that's not how we do things. Just my recommendation,
Yeah,
but
well, that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just a matter of saying, look, the process we go through is orderly and thoughtful, and,
Yeah.
for us to honestly tell you what it would take the permanent building committee to do, would be to study it and get money to support that.
Right, and
Yeah.
it would cost money to do that, to reduce the size. of it.
And we did accomplish our process.
No, I understand that. The problem
Yeah.
is, no, I understand. We did accomplish our process and it came in too high. That's what it is. No problem.
Yep.
The problem being is people are going to say, oh, what do you mean we have to pay more money to have it smaller? Because, that's supposed to magically happen without any cost. And it doesn't work that way. So
I would
that's the
think,
problem.
I would think Craig could certainly speak to that, and that's where I think it belongs, is with the select board. Do you agree, Craig?
I can say that we need money for a study, absolutely. But I think it's going to really come down to this committee saying that somebody from this committee, and Wayne, the only complaint I have about your resignation is doesn't take effect at midnight on Thursday. But somebody has to stand up and say that, well, without money, we're not going to be able to give you a cost. And quite honestly, I'm not believing a cost that doesn't come from a town committee or a contractor that we hired to do the work, but we don't have one of those either. So I think it
not
needs to come from a town
yeah,
committee.
not to take Rich to have any second thoughts. I think it's up to the chair to get up and make a simple statement, because somebody should ask, well, what is the view of the permanent building committee in terms of the way they go about designing buildings?
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not trying to throw you to the wolves here, Rich, but I think, you know, you've spoken a lot of town meeting. You're a very credible person. I mean, and you simply, in a couple of sentences, this is the way we do it. And if you're going to do it differently,
No,
again,
and
it's
I-
to make sure the voters know what
Mhm.
the next step is. And I think that's what it is.
Okay.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, so,
I agree with that.
so basically, if, when that comes up, I'd have to just say what I just said to you guys is, you know, we were asked to design a building. We had specific criteria. We did. Came in higher than what we anticipated. And so we're gonna have to get more money to reduce the cost. Next time, if we do something, we should be allotted a number. You know, we should have been, our charge should be different.
Stop there. I wouldn't even
No.
go there. I would
No.
just say that we did what you're supposed to do as
Mm.
we did what you're supposed as a committee. If we're going to change this number, it's going to take at least something nominal amount, $25,000-$30,000 for a cost study and and some redesign work.
Okay, that's
And
fine.
I just leave it at that. I think that's a clear statement on what it is. And sometimes it's better to, I mean, I'll start out by saying we're going to need cost study money. If somebody disagrees, say that, then I'll echo that we really do need to have a cost study to make anybody in this town feel comfortable voting for it, because otherwise it's just a number.
Okay, no, that's fine.
And we've never really started with a dollar amount and worked
Right.
our way back. We start with need.
No, and I understand that. I mean,
Yep,
in the
so-
past, I get it. But the thing is, it doesn't mean necessarily that one way is right, and one way is wrong. You know, we've had projects where, you know, the owner has said, you know, I only want to spend $3 million on this house. And we got the architectural plans and it came in at 6 and we cut. And then the owners put money back in. So, I mean, that's how it works.
Yep.
I would just be careful
Well-
because the on the next project, the Mass School Building Authority is going to have a lot to say on how much it costs. If the town believes that we can vote it to be a $18 million project, and it's going to have to be what it is to get the state money.
Mhm.
And hopefully we can value engineer it and work it down to a reasonable cost, but
No, that's fine. Like I said, I'm taking all this into, you know, remember, I want to know the best things to say, not just anything.
Yeah.
So, Rich,
Yep.
This project is different than the homeowner project where, you know, the cost becomes the upset that, you know, everybody works around. Here, it's really the programming. And so if you think about what we've designed, and it really is very basic, there are 3 function rooms. There is a commercial kitchen with a dining room, and there's an exercise room, and there's private meeting space in order to conduct, private consultation. That's it. That's what costs $16 million. If we're going to come back with a number that's going to be different, I keep saying we, but it's really you at this point, Rich. Something has to change. 2 of those rooms leave.
Mhm.
The dining room leaves. That's the thoughtful process. It's not just where do we cut. And one of, so it really is a decision-making process with the Council on Aging of, if it's going to be $8 million or 10 or whatever the number, what programmatically is a wise investment for the town to make for that size of building. And so I would put it in those terms, and we've had, you know, the opportunity to sit down with that group and have that discussion, and to do that thoughtfully with an architect, and have that come out in, you know, redone in the numbers, so that you can, if you start out with a smaller, you know, PM&C number, and then your gross up, you know, based on your percentages, that will all work, you know, those are multipliers that will all work to your benefit if it's a smaller number to start with.
Mhm.
But you got to have that conversation about what is it that the Council on Aging really will be willing to live with in whatever space, you know, they would ultimately get. And I think, and I don't know, and you may know this right off the top of your head, I think one of the misunderstandings is that commercial buildings and public buildings are designed to different levels of code. You know, I don't know what life safety requirements are in this kind of a building or not. You know, we always talk about prevailing wage as being a major factor, but I think there are other nuts and bolts parts that drive that actual construction cost. And we haven't been through that either. So I don't know to what extent, you know, and again, I go back to what I think will be the gorilla in the corner of the room, is that we can do this for $12 million. I mean, people will love to hear that. And especially the seniors, who will now look at you know, a lesser tax burden. It's to their benefit to pay less. So I think you need to be aware that we can't necessarily make all of that happen. We can't just say it's going to be some lesser number.
Mhm. Okay,
One more question, Mr. Chairman.
go ahead, please.
So we're all settled on the motion to refer
Mhm.
being successful. What happens if it's not successful? That is, there's a motion to refer does not carry. Now, let's assume for the sake of argument, what's going to happen is that the finance committees, they're going to make a main motion to dismiss. My question for us is, in that debate, if any, do we have a role in that one? I'm not sure, you know, I'm probably overthinking this. Most of the stuff will come out on the motion to refer anyway, but I mean, we had a proposal that was presented to the finance committee that we think is an accurate cost estimate of that building. Whether you want that building or not, it's up to you guys. But do we say anything in the next round? Do we, I hate to leave it on the table where the finance committee, let's just take an example, says that the PBC is wrong on its numbers because some other town built it for less, which is exactly what's happening here.
Go
Can I
ahead,
make a
Greg.
comment on that? I don't believe the finance committee will be the one making another motion quickly if referral fails. I think there's a lot of people on the floor, both the pro and the con side, are going to be fighting their way to the microphone to make a motion. So I think that that's the way it's going to come out. I would suggest that standing by your numbers is different than advocating for or against the building. Yeah, if you're reinforcing that the numbers are accurate for all the reasons that your years of experience versus a search to find another building in another town or did something similar have more validity, I think that's a legitimate argument for the PBC. I've always admired that for the most part, well, when I was in the finance committee, I was in a different hat, but the PBC always stood separate from the advocating for the project or against the project. They were there to build the project. You know, they did the right research, they did the right work. Stand by your numbers, absolutely. You know, defend those numbers, absolutely. But it's the town's decision whether the cost is something they can afford, or if it's a project is something they want.
I agree.
And to Jim's question, I really think that if there's a question, if we ultimately are deciding on the merits, I really think it's the Council on Aging who needs to come in and say, Craig, I think you're right. The PBC's role is to talk about the numbers and how we got there and is it the right number? But whether or not the project goes ahead or not, or what their desire is that's not our role to say that. If they're going to be advocates for one thing or another, they need to get up and make that case.
Yeah.
My only question was, if the numbers get challenged, we need to be in a position, again, I agree with Craig, and I think, Rich, you're comfortable with that. Look, these are the numbers based upon what you told us you wanted.
Yeah.
This is the work we did, and these are the numbers that are there. And if it's numbers that you can't live with, then fine, then vote against it. I mean,
I agree with that, Jim. I think we should stand by the number because I believe the number's correct. I mean, you have to show people that this is the product you're getting and this is how much it costs. And if you don't like that, well, and now we're into a redo. And somebody has to, as I said earlier, educate everybody what that redo entails.
And I think there are a lot of people that got all caught up in, we don't like the way this looks. And we kept saying to them, it's an envelope, it's illustrative, it's not, whatever. And then the last thing I saw was a totally different looking building with a gambrel style. I don't know if Ellen did that or what, but wasn't our product.
I think you may be right.
Okay, enough.
Yep. All right. So, so I think we've got a game plan going in. And I think that's it. I think, so I make a motion to thank Wayne for his years of work. Go ahead, you were gonna say something?
No.
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Hang on.
Okay.
I think you should spend a little time, Rich, talking about the middle high school project and what lies ahead for that. I would just let the committee know that the steps for that would be to convene a meeting with now it's a different committee because you have 2 or maybe even 3 additional voting members on that committee. So you'd have to have 2 different meetings on probably 2 different days.
Mhm.
The first step would be to create an RFQ for an OPM.
Yep.
You'd have to submit that, put that on the central register, solicit, qualifications, for such a time, that process. Receive them, review them. The way the PBC has handled that in the past is to select 3, if you have enough, of your top qualifiers that you want to then personally interview. All of that is done without regard for cost. It's just based on qualifications. And then the committee makes a selection for an OPM. And then at that point you negotiate a price for their service. Now, the materials that I've seen from Denise Gibbons and the school committee is that they have a budget for that. And I know they spoke with Tim Bonfatti about, what the going rate is for that work I'm not sure if it's based on this size of project or not, But those are the steps. The very first step is to get an OPM.
Okay.
Then right on the heels of that, you start all over again, doing the same thing with an architect. Put out an RFQ.
Do you do a scope, Wayne, on that?
Yes. It's not going to be very detailed, but you do put out a scope with, I believe, an order of magnitude kind of number. But don't hold me to that. I'm not.
Mhm.
Yep, the OPM does that, don't they, Wayne?
Yeah, a lot of that was done by the OPM.
Yeah,
Right, but when you
Yeah.
go and when you look for an RFQ of architects, I think you give them an understanding of, is it a renovation, new construction? Some of that is up in the air because if I read the materials, I think with the MSBA, there's a possibility that they would recommend new. And if you recall what we did with the Clyde Brown project, we did go down two different paths. One was to renovate
right.
and add on to the existing Clyde Brown, and the other was to do it new, and different options for new. And I'm not sure what they've represented to the MSBA for this project. So, and then certain architects, Rich, are going to be interested in, $100 million new construction kind of work, and others are going to be more interested in a smaller, ad reno
Mhm.
kind of project. So I think that'll determine the kinds of firms that you're going to attract. So then you go through the same process with them. You review the proposals, you get it down to your finalists, you interview them. Again, no price consideration at that point.
Mhm.
But if you just think about it, by the time you get your qualifications ready, you advertise, you give time for them to submit it, then time for you to review, schedule interviews or whatever. You're talking 6 to 8 weeks for just the OPM, and probably a similar time for an architect. So you're looking at probably 4 months before you really start putting, having discussions with the architect. And again, what you do, you go back to the same thing that we did on the senior center, is the architect sits down with the school administration and they talk about programming. What do you want to accomplish? What kind of space do you need? What do you think you want to do? And then what's the student population going to be, and space needs per person, and all of that. And it's all very deliberate. So before you really have a plan, is you're 8, 10, 12 months out if you start immediately.
Mhm.
And I think if you get the funding tomorrow night, you need to start immediately. So I would say, and that will be the bigger project, and certainly the bigger, financial implication to the town. I know Craig has expressed to me
Yeah.
some concerns about this project, but I think it's this committee's job to jump right on it.
No, you get started right away on this, on the school project. I agree. And it's going to be at least a year from now, maybe the Springtown meeting a year from now out that it gets voted. There's a lot of work on it. There's a lot that goes into doing it, and it's not a slow process. And so they're going to be hitting close to the same time, both of these projects. It's going to be, and on this one at town meeting tomorrow night, I think this committee can be silent. I mean, there's nothing that you've done yet or will do.
I already talked to a couple of members of the board just to see what was going on that. If they needed me to, as a PBC member, to stand up and, support because of the Clyde Brown School. And they said, we don't want you to say anything.
Yeah.
So,
Do they-
I think you're right. Yeah.
Do they actually have the funding commitment yet?
uh, go ahead.
They have the funding commit pending town meeting vote.
Mhm.
Once we
Okay.
do this study, once we vote this and vote the money, we spend our 1.3, but at that point, we've been promised that there will be about 50% of eligible expenses. We all know that means it's 40, 45, some number in there. There is a commitment that this will be funded by if we build what they approve, we will receive funding. It's not a question of not getting funding at this point. We have to do the study, we have to build what they approve, and they will commit to the funding percentage. So it's not a roll the dice whether we're going to get any funding on this or not.
But it's my understanding, Craig, that they're not picking up that percentage just on the study if the town doesn't approve the overall project. That the
Right.
the 1.3 or whatever is spent only becomes reimbursable at that rate as part of the total project.
Right. We're on the hook for this 1.3, and it possibly can be partially reimbursed or not, depending on whether the project goes forward. You're right, absolutely on that one. So this 1.3, I'm just assuming is internal borrowing, ongoing expense. We'll pay it off over time like we would, and if we roll it into the project and bond it and get reimbursements on it, so much the better. But at this point in all my financial plans, it's a sunk cost, you know. I'd
And
rather
Wayne,
be surprised the other way.
one more question for you, which we probably at some point in time, I may have to give you a phone call to go through some of these secrets. But on has there been past information or stuff on the OPMs and things that, we have or we can get? I just, am I starting blind here, or is there stuff that we have that, okay, that's why I'm asking.
No.
Yeah, I would suggest, and maybe it's okay if you say it's okay for Kim to reach out. I think she should reach out to the school folks, because the capital planning committee requested information, and we received their correspondence relative to the price, the 1.3 million. We received a copy of their application, the MBA application, which sort of starts to tell you what this is all about. And then we did receive a copy of the PowerPoint that Denise Gibbons presented to the I guess it was the FinCom, maybe the select board too, but at least that gives us some papers to see kind of scale it where it is. And it's clear from the application anyway, that renovation, replacement or renovation are on the table here, at least in the application.
And
Okay.
and
Yeah.
they retained a firm, the same one that provided them information on the Clyde Brown. The firm is called Tetra Tech.
Yeah.
And they do facilities maintenance and long-term programming for sustainability. The basis for their scope, which has to do with new roofs and new mechanical systems, comes from that report.
Mhm.
And so that should be available as well.
Is that done?
They have that. I've
Okay.
never seen it.
Study.
I have no idea
Yeah,
what it
Tetra
says.
Tech, it's an old report. It's we've seen it a couple times on the finance committee, at least. It goes back to when I was on the finance committee.
Well, they did the Clyde Brown one as well, didn't they?
Correct.
Yes.
Well, I
And
guess
this
the
one
message
predates
is,
Clyde Brown.
if we don't ask, they're not going to just send it to us. I guess that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, no, so this is the type of thing, normally like in the planning board, I'd go to, Kim would be my thing. I'd call Camille, hey, Camille, how do I do this? So that's, kind of what I need is, obviously, not having all of the contacts and background information. That's the type of stuff that I would need help on through Diane, Kim, and Jim, if you guys, and Craig. I mean, I, could obviously use help on these things, because, I'm willing to do what I can, but I do need help getting started. So.
We're here to make you the person of the year, okay?
Oh,
That's all.
perfect. That'll be
Yeah.
tomorrow night. That'll be tomorrow night, right, Jim?
Yeah, right.
I think Wayne actually gave me a shirt and it looked like the Target logo. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
and it's red.
It wasn't Walmart, it was Target.
It was Target. Yeah, thanks.
So are we done with the school now? Because
I have one more question on that.
Okay,
And it's for Craig. Craig, I looked at the minutes for the appointment of the committee.
Yes,
Select board minutes include the high school principal, I guess, as a voting member of the committee. Was that intentional?
yes. I think the MB Mass School Building requires a certain makeup of who votes and who doesn't vote.
I'm not sure that's correct, but okay, fine. I just think,
Yeah, I'll double check it, but that's what was presented, I
what
believe.
happened last time?
we had Jason Phelps on the committee.
Yeah.
Did he
He was the
vote?
principal of the Clyde Brown.
Yeah, but was he a voting member?
No,
I thought he,
Well,
I think only
Well-
Denise and,
Denise and Steve, I think.
we can double check that just to make sure. There was a turnover of school principals, wasn't there, during that process?
yes.
And that
No.
might have been, no? When
Jason
did-
was there till almost the end.
No, but wasn't there somebody prior to Jason when we start, these things take forever is the problem. Maybe I'm thinking wrong.
it just seemed odd to
Yeah.
me. We named the superintendent, the buildings manager, and the finance guy as non-voting members. And
Yeah.
the principal was a voting member. I just didn't
Well, we
understand.
can clearly check the requirements from the
Yeah.
school building, and if there needs to be a change made, we can revote. I'm not too proud to revote if I have to.
Craig, I was at that select board meeting and where both Denise and Steve Catalano made their case to be voting members. And I believe that's what the select board approved. I don't recall them, but I do recall some discussion about who the MSBA required
Yeah.
to be on the committee, but my recollection is the select board only voted those two to be voting members.
Well, we can check the video. There's video of it, so it's easy enough to check. Maybe it's just recorded wrong in the minutes. I don't recall exactly the layout of that committee and how it was structured. But it'll be easy enough to check.
Okay.
Now, Wayne, if you just want to, or no, I'm sorry, Wayne, Jim, if you want to email me the date of that meeting, I can fast forward through the video till I find it. Okay.
Or you could have your staff do it.
I think I'm
Who
going
would
to
that,
just,
who would that be?
not
You
exactly
got three
sure
people
anymore.
now. You
Yeah.
got three people now, geez.
You know what? I'm going to push this right off to my staff. I like having a staff. This is the FinCom days when I didn't have a big staff.
Okay, Craig, change your hat and become staff.
Yeah, still getting used to having staff here. I started doing a bank reconciliation yesterday just for the hell of it.
We still have some DPW issues, do we not, before we quit?
My understanding about the DPW is just the emergency generator.
Right,
And my understanding is they signed a purchase order for that.
yeah, okay,
It's got a long lead time. The committee approved some additional costs for hooking it up. There's an electrician, and I'm trying to think, there's something else, maybe pouring the pad or,
yeah,
yeah, so there is some additional cost that's still outstanding. But I think it's just confined to that, Diane.
and are we leaving the bubbling of the vinyl in the wash bay?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
that was, we were gonna monitor it, but there's nothing technically wrong with it. It's unsightly. But there's basically to try to repair it, either they have to rip down all the sheets and redo it. I understand that, Jim was it's disappointing to have your new car get that first dent in it, but going forwards, as long as it doesn't fail, there's nothing technically wrong with it.
I would just like to be reassured one way or the other that it's not getting worse.
It's a year later. We could ask them to send us a picture. That's fine.
Or we could go see it. That's
Or we
easy.
could go see it. Right?
In your spare time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in Newton right now, so I won't be home until 5:30.
Okay. No, I
It'll
won't.
be dark. It'll be dark by then.
It'll be dark. All right. So Wayne, like I said, I'll probably get in touch with you to pick your brain for some more stuff. And I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second. Oh,
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
aye.
All right.
All right, great.
See you
Thanks,
tomorrow
Wayne, for
night.
all your help.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Wayne.
thanks.
Wayne, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Wayne, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.